The credit card reader beeped 3 times, and Frank watched the leather-jacketed biker's shoulders tense at pump number 4. The man tried his card again. Same result. Frank shifted his weight against his own truck, calculating the $17.32 in his wallet against the $43 he needed for enough diesel to reach Phoenix. The job there might not even exist anymore, but it was his only shot at making next month's truck payment. The biker wore the Hell's Angels patch across his back, death's head grinning between the rockers. Everything about him screamed danger, from the silver skull rings to the way other customers gave him a wide berth. Smart people minded their own business around men like that. Frank had learned that lesson growing up in Detroit. But when the biker's third attempt failed and he started walking toward the station to explain his situation to a clerk who looked terrified, Frank found himself moving. His work boots crunched across the oil-stained concrete. 23 years of driving long haul had taught him to read people, and this wasn't anger in the man's posture. It was embarrassment. Frank tapped the biker on the shoulder before he reached the station door. Up close, the man was older than expected, maybe 55, with gray threading through his beard and crow's feet that spoke of years squinting into desert sun. The death's head patch looked faded, well-worn. "Excuse me," Frank said. "You're pump number 4? The biker turned, tensing. "Yeah, card's acting up." Frank pulled out his wallet, extracted 20. "Let me get that for you. We've all been there." The man's eyes widened. "Brother, I can't let you do that. You don't know me. Don't need to know you to help," Frank replied, walking toward the station. The biker followed, protesting, but Frank was already inside, sliding the 20 across the counter to a relieved-looking clerk. Outside, the biker extended a weathered hand. "Name's Mike Sullivan, and that was the most decent thing anyone's done for me in months." "You former military?" Frank shook his head. "Just a trucker trying to make Phoenix by morning." Mike studied him with new intensity. "Well, Frank the trucker, you just helped out a brother who's been rolling with the same crew for 30 years. We take care of people who take care of us. What's your route number?" 2 hours down Interstate 10, Frank couldn't shake the encounter. Mike Sullivan hadn't acted like any biker he'd imagined. The handshake was firm but respectful, not the bone-crushing dominance display Frank expected. And that question about military service, asked with genuine curiosity rather than suspicion or mockery. The CB radio crackled with trucker chatter about road conditions and way stations, but Frank's mind kept replaying Mike's words. "We take care of people who take care of us." What kind of motorcycle gang operated on gratitude and honor codes? His fuel gauge showed 3/4 full, the extra diesel from his $20 kindness. Phoenix was still 8 hours away, and his appointment with the shipping company wasn't until noon tomorrow. If they even had work. 3 months behind on truck payments, creditors calling daily, and he'd just given away money he couldn't spare to help a stranger. But something in Mike's eyes suggested this story wasn't over. The way he'd asked for Frank's route number, memorizing Highway 10 West like it mattered, like he was planning something. Frank had driven enough miles to recognize when a simple moment carried weight beyond its size. Meanwhile, Mike Sullivan sat in the Desert Wind Diner, phone pressed to his ear. The coffee had gone cold 20 minutes ago, but he hadn't moved since Frank's taillights disappeared into the desert darkness. "Tommy, it's Sullivan." "Yeah, I know it's late. Listen, I need you to run a plate for me. Arizona Commercial, Big Rig. The driver's name is Frank, heading to Phoenix on Highway 10. No, he's not in trouble. Opposite, actually." Mike traced patterns on the Formica tabletop, while his crew leader pulled strings with contacts at the Department of Transportation. 30 years riding together had built networks that stretched across state lines. Former Marines, retired cops, discharged Army mechanics. Men who'd found brotherhood after the service ended. The phone buzzed with a text. Frank Morrison, age 47, CDL holder for 23 years. Clean driving record. Current employer filed bankruptcy 6 weeks ago. Truck payments 3 months overdue. Repossession notice filed. Mike smiled grimly and dialed another number. "Hey, it's Sullivan. Remember that shipping contract you mentioned in Tucson? The one needing reliable drivers? I got somebody for you. And Rodriguez, When this guy, Frank Morrison, shows up, you make sure he knows his fuel's covered for the month. Frank's truck shuddered as he downshifted through the Phoenix suburbs. The engine temperature gauge had been climbing for the last 50 miles, and now a grinding noise accompanied every gear change. He pulled into the shipping company parking lot with steam beginning to rise from under the hood. The meeting lasted 12 minutes. Budget cuts, they said. No new drivers needed. The receptionist wouldn't even look at his logbook. Frank sat in his cab afterward, engine ticking as it cooled, staring at the repossession notice he'd hidden in his glove compartment. 14 days before they took the truck, his phone rang. Unknown Arizona number. Frank Morrison? This is Rodriguez Freight Solutions in Tucson. Mike Sullivan gave me your name. We've got a dedicated run between Tucson and San Antonio, 3 trips weekly. You interested? Frank gripped the phone tighter. I don't know any Mike Sullivan. Big guy. Rides a Harley. Says you help him out at truck stop. Listen, Frank, this route pays well. Fuel allowance included. You can start Monday if you want it. The engine made another grinding sound. Frank looked at the steam, still wisping from his hood, then at the job rejection letter crumpled on his passenger seat. Frank drove south toward Tucson, with Rodriguez's job offer echoing in his head. The truck's grinding had worsened, and twice he'd pulled over to let the engine cool. Each mile felt borrowed against time he didn't have. At a truck stop outside Casa Grande, he called his ex-wife Linda. The conversation was brief and brutal. Kevin needed money for college textbooks. Sarah's dental work couldn't wait another month. Frank promised to send what he could, knowing his wallet held $43 and his checking account showed overdrawn. He hung up and stared at his phone. Mike Sullivan's $20 kindness seeming impossibly distant now. Good deeds didn't fix transmissions or pay child support. But somehow, Mike had reached across the desert with connections and opportunity exactly when Frank needed them most. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Frank, this is Mike. Heard Rodriguez called. My crew's got a guy who can look at your truck in Tucson. No charge. Address attached. We take care of our own. P.S. brought something for you. Frank read the message twice. Our own? They talked for 5 minutes at a gas station. But Mike Sullivan seemed to operate by different rules than the world Frank knew. The Tucson garage sat in an industrial district where chain-link fences and corrugated metal buildings stretched toward desert mountains. Frank's truck wheezed into the lot just as the sun touched the horizon, painting everything orange and gold. The grinding noise had become constant now, each gear change a gamble against complete breakdown. A heavy-set man in coveralls emerged from the garage, wiping grease from massive hands. Behind him came Mike Sullivan, still wearing his leather jacket, but somehow looking different in the fading light. Less dangerous, more purposeful. Tommy Rodriguez, Mike said by way of introduction. Best diesel mechanic between here and El Paso. Former Marine motor pool sergeant. Tommy, meet Frank Morrison. Tommy's handshake was firm, professional. Heard you helped out our brother Mike. Let's see what we're dealing with here. While Tommy popped the hood and started his examination, Mike pulled an envelope from his jacket. Frank, you got kids? 2. College age. Mike handed him the envelope. Community fund. Every guy in our crew contributes monthly. We use it for brothers who need a hand up, not a handout. This covers your truck payment and give you breathing room to get steady with Rodriguez. Frank stared at the envelope, afraid to open it. Through the garage bay door, he could see Tommy already deep under the hood, muttering technical assessments in language Frank recognized from 23 years of truck stops and repair shops. The sound of competence. Mike leaned against a workbench, arms crossed. You know what we call ourselves? The Forgotten Brotherhood. Guys who served, came home, found each other on the road. We're not the Hell's Angels people think we are. That's just protective coloring in a world that doesn't always appreciate veterans. Tommy's voice echoed from under the hood. Transmission shot, but I can rebuild it. Need parts, though. Give me 3 days. Mike nodded. Frank, you got somewhere to stay in Tucson? The motel money was earmarked for fuel. Frank shook his head. Tommy pulled his head out, wiping oil from his hands. Got a spare room above the garage. Clean bed, hot shower, coffee in the morning. Part of the service. Frank finally opened the envelope. $3,000 in hundreds. His truck payment was $1,800. The excess would cover Kevin's textbooks and Sarah's dental work with money left over. "This is too much," Frank whispered. Mike's smile was gentle. "Brother, you just learned what honor looks like when it comes full circle." That evening in Tommy's spare room, Frank called his kids. Kevin's voice cracked with relief when Frank promised the textbook money would arrive by morning. Sarah actually cried when he mentioned covering her dental work. For the first time in months, Frank fell asleep without calculating bills or worrying about repossession notices. The next morning brought the sound of motorcycles. Frank looked out the window to see a dozen Harleys parked in formation outside the garage. Men in leather jackets moved with military precision, unloading boxes and tools. The Forgotten Brotherhood had assembled. Mike found Frank in the garage office, coffee in hand. "Wanted you to meet the crew. Each man here served his country. Came home to find civilians didn't quite know what to do with us. We found each other on the highway." Frank shook hands with Rodriguez, the job coordinator, Army Logistics. Martinez, the part supplier, Navy mechanic. Wilson, the route advisor, Air Force navigator. Each introduction revealed another piece of the network that had mobilized around his $20 kindness. By noon, Frank's transmission was rebuilt, his truck detailed, and his fuel tank filled. The crew gathered around as Tommy handed him the keys. "Your family now, Frank. This network runs coast to coast. You're never alone on the road again." 3 weeks into the Tucson-San Antonio route, Frank's life had transformed beyond recognition. Rodriguez Freight treated him like their most valued driver, always ensuring his loads were profitable and his fuel account current. The rebuilt transmission ran smoother than it had in years, and Tommy had installed a CB radio programmed with Forgotten Brotherhood frequencies. The radio crackled constantly with check-ins from brothers across the Southwest. Martinez in Albuquerque reporting good truck stops. Wilson in El Paso sharing weather updates. Rodriguez in Phoenix coordinating loads for maximum efficiency. Frank had become part of a network that stretched across state lines, watching out for each other's safety and success. At a truck stop outside Junction, Texas, Frank witnessed the Brotherhood's reach firsthand. A young driver sat crying beside his broken-down rig, holding a phone with bad news about his sick daughter. Frank approached without hesitation, remembering his own moment of desperation. "Brother, what's your situation?" The young man looked up, surprised by the kindness in Frank's voice. "Transmission went out. Got no money for repairs. My little girl's in the hospital, and I can't get home to Dallas." Frank pulled out his phone and dialed Mike Sullivan. "Mike, it's Frank. Got a brother here needs our help." Within 2 hours, the Junction truck stop transformed into a command center. Mike Sullivan arrived first, followed by Tommy with a full toolkit. Martinez pulled up with transmission parts. Wilson brought cash from the emergency fund. The young driver, Danny Watson, watched in amazement as the Forgotten Brotherhood mobilized around his crisis. Frank coordinated the operation with quiet authority. "Danny," Mike said, watching Frank direct the repair effort. "This is how it started with Frank here. Simple act of kindness at a gas station. Now look at him. Natural leader, natural brother." Tommy worked under Danny's truck while Frank called Rodriguez Freight. They had a Dallas-bound load that needed immediate pickup. Perfect timing for Danny to get home to his daughter while earning emergency money. Frank had learned to think 3 moves ahead, seeing solutions before problems fully formed. By sunset, Danny's truck was repaired and loaded. He stood beside Frank, overwhelmed. "I can't believe strangers would do this for me." Frank smiled, remembering his own words at that Phoenix gas station. "We're not strangers anymore, Danny. You're family now, and family takes care of family." Mike watched Frank embrace the young driver, then turned to Tommy. "You see that? Frank's become our best recruiter. He understands what we're about better than guys who've been riding with us for years." 6 months later, Frank Morrison had become a legend on Interstate 10. Truckers from California to Florida knew his call sign on the CB radio, and the Forgotten Brotherhood had grown by 30% under his recruitment efforts. His route between Tucson and San Antonio had become a lifeline for drivers in crisis, with Frank's truck serving as mobile command center for Brotherhood operations. The transformation was complete when Rodriguez Freight offered Frank a regional coordinator position, managing driver welfare across the Southwest. He accepted immediately, knowing he could extend the Brotherhood's reach through official channels while maintaining their grassroots support network. At the annual Forgotten Brotherhood gathering in Sturgis, Mike Sullivan presented Frank with a special patch, black leather with silver stitching that read Honor Keeper. The ceremony drew brothers from 27 states, each man understanding that Frank embodied their highest values. Frank looked out at the sea of leather jackets and weathered faces, remembering that desperate night at the Phoenix gas station when $20 seemed like a fortune. Now he oversaw a network that had helped over 200 drivers and their families, turning moments of crisis into stories of brotherhood. Have you ever experienced the power of unexpected kindness? Share your story in the comments below and tell us about a time when someone's generosity changed your life completely.